Hey guys, I'm Whitney, a personal injury attorney on a mission to help you make safer and more informed decisions about beauty. After representing women harmed by dangerous cosmetic products and procedures, I have realized that the beauty industry is full of dangerous risks and side effects that are unknown and not talked about enough. On each episode, we'll dive into all the latest beauty trends and discuss how we can stay safe in a sea of potions and procedures promising youth and beauty. We will explore real-life stories, legal insights, and advice from the experts. From Botox to BBLs to toxic products in your makeup bag, we're going to talk about it all. My goal is for you to leave every episode with the information that you need to stay safe, beautiful, and informed. You're listening to the Beauty Justice Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the Beauty Justice Podcast. I have today not one, but two amazing guests who are going to be talking to us about a very important topic, which is breast implant illness. This topic is something that is being talked about a little bit more, and there is more information becoming available. But I still think that there are so many women who already have breast implants or who are considering breast implants who have never heard of this and have absolutely no idea what it is. So I'm really excited today to have these two on so that they can educate us and give us all the information that we need so that we can be informed on this really important topic. So I have here with me today Robin Tout, who is the co-founder of the Global Patient Advocacy Coalition. She is a breast cancer survivor herself, and she also has her own personal story with breast implant illness. She is a badass who is not afraid to ruffle some feathers and stand up to some of the higher powers that be in order to make sure that women are getting the information that they need to know. So I'm really excited to have her here. And I also have with us Amanda Porta, who is also known as the Holistic Beauty Coach on Instagram. She is a patient advocate and a holistic health coach who also has her own personal story with breast implant illness. She has been on a mission to help other women recover and heal from their own breast implant illness. And I'm really excited to have both of you on here today. So let's get into it. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks, Whitney.
Thanks for being here. So I have a lot of questions and things that I want to cover today. So I'm just going to jump right into it. And I would love, before we kind of really get started into everything here, if both of you could just kind of give us a little background information on yourselves and a little bit of just history about your stories with breast implant illness and kind of how you have gone through this whole process and ended up here doing the work that you're doing today. So Robin, can you go first?
Sure. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017. And as a breast cancer patient, you have an entire team of doctors that are managing and overseeing your care. And I chose to have a double mastectomy. And I was kind of talked into doing reconstruction with breast implants. None of my surgeons gave me the option to go flat or not have reconstruction. It was just kind of what they expect you to do as a breast cancer patient. And I was pretty young. I was 44 years old at the time. I didn't have any treatment for my cancer, only surgery. And after I got tissue expanders and breast implants, my health just really started to decline. And I couldn't understand what was happening because I wasn't doing any treatment. There was no reason for me to be sick with some of these random symptoms I've never had in my life. My hair started falling out. My eyelashes were falling out. I had skin rashes, heart palpitations, anxiety, rashes, joint pain, muscle pain, fatigue, insomnia. I could just list them on. And it wasn't making sense to me. You know, I was a very active middle-aged woman. I live in Arizona. We have beautiful weather. I like to go hiking and skiing and water skiing and golfing and wakeboarding and all these outdoor activities. And I couldn't even walk around the block. So it was actually another breast cancer patient that told me she had had a breast augmentation years prior and her implants made her really sick. So when we started comparing stories, her symptoms matched mine almost exactly. So I made the decision to have my implants removed after just 4 months. And after I had them removed, everything was restored back to the way it should have been. And I've been completely fine ever since. It's been 7.5 years. So it was a shock to me that something that is supposed to be FDA approved and safe and being put in breast cancer patients could have that detrimental effect on my health. And that just prompted me to be a patient advocate and just share my story so that other women who might be suffering through the same symptoms that I had can maybe figure it out sooner, because a lot of these women go decades before they figure out, that it's their implants that are making them sick. So that's how I got started.
Wow, thank you. And Amanda, what about you?
Well, my story is a little different than Robin's. I got breast implants for the first time in my early 20s in 2003 when I had a minor breast deformity. And at the time, that was really the only way they had to resolve it. So I reluctantly said yes, even though that was not something that I had wanted to do. A lot of my friends had them at the time. That was kind of the Pamela Anderson Baywatch. So it was not. So I got them. I had to get them replaced a year later because of something called capsular contracture. And I went to a new surgeon who was working with the manufacturers doing studies on, and this is interesting now, the new silicone implants being reintroduced to the market. Because during this time, you could only get saline. There was a moratorium on silicone breast implants. So I said, okay, but I said, isn't silicone bad? Like, I at least had, the wherewithal to say that at the time. But, when you're that age, you think you're invincible. And I was just going along with who I thought was, whoa, a professional. He was the best surgeon for breasts in our area. And so I said yes. And he said, well, you'll be part of a study, which I never was part of a study. I never even heard about the study after getting them in. I've had now so many women contact me on social media saying, not only did a lot of them go to that same surgeon, but they said, we never were part of a study either. So I did start getting hormonal disruption within the first 9 months. Again, I don't know, at that age, I wasn't correlating it with the breast implants, but I was going to the gynecologist saying, something's wrong. I'm having like perimenopausal symptoms. To which, the gaslighting started right there. Oh, well, that's your normal. And I said, well, no, that's not my normal. That's why I'm here today. And it would take another 7 years or so before 40 symptoms came out. Everything from hair loss, trouble breathing. I could barely walk up a flight of stairs, 58 pounds of inflammation at times, hormonal disruption, thyroid issues. And, I was rushing from doctor to doctor, specialist to specialist, trying to figure this out. The entire time, I am now working in the industry. And for a short time in there, I was actually selling breast implants, never having any women come in complaining of being sick, not hearing any talk of it. It wasn't until 2016 when Crystal Hefner was on the cover of People magazine, I got goosebumps. And I said to my boss at the time, oh my gosh, is it my breast implants? Do they need to be replaced? Is what I thought. Is that what could be wrong? Because she has a lot of the same symptoms as me. And he said, oh, there's no such thing as women getting sick from their breast implants. This was a man in his early 60s who had worked during the moratorium, right? When so many women were sick in the 90s. And so fast forward to 2018, the end of it, I started putting the puzzle pieces together because my colonic practitioner said to me, I think I know what's wrong with you. I think it's the breast implants, because I had 11 other women this year lay on this table and they look and sound like you. And when they get their implants out, they get better. And I was in denial. I said, well, did you see what I do for a living? That I've never heard of this before. And she said, you should look into it. And, when God wants you to wake up, I can absolutely say that he puts it right in front of your face. Like, next day I saw a huge billboard about PIP implants. A couple of days later, a guy friend of mine called and said, I don't think it's right that you're still sick. I think you need to call my neighbor. And then I did. I called on an almost stranger, and she said, oh, I think it's your breast implants. I was sick too. And she unfortunately had mast cell activation and still wasn't better. But in those weeks, I had 3 weeks pretty much to get ready for surgery. I got into these support groups and saw that there were hundreds of thousands of women in just one of them. And so literally on my recovery bed, I was reading, I had time to read all of these women saying, "Oh, I did go back to my surgeon. And he said, it's my fault. I should have known. I should have known these cause autoimmune. I should have known that these cause hormonal disruption." And I said, "No, we don't tell you that when you come into our office." I've never heard any of the conversations. And so I decided right there, I said, I want to have these women's backs and I want to stand up for them because that's not fair to say that they should have known. I didn't know. So that's where we are now.
Wow. Okay. So lots of things to unpack here. I want to just start off by asking you guys if you can just tell us what is in a breast implant. What is a breast implant made out of? Because I think that a lot of people are going to be completely shocked when they hear, what is actually in an implant. So can you please give us a little information about that?
I will pull up the list of chemicals that were in my breast implants, most of which I can't even pronounce. Methotrimethylsilane, acetone, as we know that to be nail polish, isopropanol, which is very close to rubbing alcohol, pentanone, ethylbenzene, and then a bunch of heavy metals, arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, cobalt, copper, lead, magnesium, mercury, nickel, platinum, tin. I mean, we know some of these heavy metals and chemicals to be carcinogenic, neurotoxins, and even, like think of lead-based paint that's been banned. Think of mercury fillings that are no longer used. Like these are all things that cause neurological symptoms, systemic symptoms. We have a lot of women that have mental confusion, memory loss, unable to find certain words. So you look at the list of chemicals alone that are in these implants, and I actually did a deep dive into the chemicals that were in my implants because I wanted to know what is in these things that affected me so horribly. And every single ingredient that I looked up the safety data sheet for, they are flammable, they are toxic or harmful or fatal if swallowed, they cause organ damage, tissue damage. And I'm sitting here thinking, so they're taking all these chemicals, putting them in a silicone shell and implanting them into women's chests. How can that be okay? Especially for a product that was already banned for over a decade in the 1990s. And they bring them back to the market. Women are still getting sick. Women are getting cancers now from these implants. And they're still preaching that they're safe. At what point, I'd like to know from the FDA and from the plastic surgeon societies, what's the magic number? How many cancer cases do we need? How many deaths do we need? And how many hundreds of thousands of women need to be harmed before it's taken seriously?
Wow. Yeah, I, just kind of recently started doing some of my own research on breast implants. And when you hear things like arsenic and lead and, you're just kind of thinking, why is that in there? Can they make it with something else? Like, I don't understand why those need to be ingredients. But I think it's, when somebody's going in to get breast implants, you don't say, hey, can you pull out the ingredient list and tell me what is in this device? There's no informed consent that a doctor has to read you that tells you, these are the ingredients of this medical device that we're about to put into your body. So I think that that's really disturbing. I want to talk a little bit about, Amanda, you had kind of touched on this, but the moratorium on silicone implants, because this is something that I don't think a lot of people know that this went on. And I think especially, younger women that, weren't around or weren't old enough to think about breast implants during that time, have no idea that this happened. I have breast implants currently that I am wanting to have taken out. And I got them put in when I was probably about 20, I don't know, 21 or 22. And I remember at the time talking to the surgeon that I went to about, the different options that were available in terms of types of implants and that kind of thing. And my surgeon actually did tell me about the moratorium. And he said, these silicone implants, there was a time period where they were banned. They've come back on the market. And he basically told me, I still don't fully trust that they are safe. So he suggested to me that I should go with saline implants, which is what I decided to do at the time. Now I have learned since that the saline implants are actually made out of silicone. They have silicone in the shell, and that's something else that we can talk about later. But, at the time, I do believe that the surgeon I went to was, giving me the best information that he had at the time. And, so I ended up going with the saline implants. So I kind of had a little bit of information given to me about this moratorium. I knew that there were issues with silicone implants being safe, but, I didn't know the full extent of that. And I still think that so many people don't. So can you just tell us a little bit about the moratorium and, kind of what happened from these implants being taken off the market to when they came back on? Just kind of give us a little bit of history there.
Yeah, I mean, in the 90s, there were so many women who were reporting that they were ill from their breast implants that they did pull them from the market for a period of time. And then that's when they introduced and were really pushing saline implants. And if I look back at my age then, and a lot of the women who now are getting sick, a lot of us are in our 40s. A lot of those women are the ones who got the saline because that's all that was available at the time. And we were sold on the fact, well, this is the safer alternative, not knowing exactly what you just said, that it's still, and I have to be the bearer of bad news to women. Like, oh, I know that you got them thinking you were making the safer decision, but unfortunately, the same chemical makeup is in the shell of both implants. And so at the end of the day, if it ruptures, I would much rather obviously have saline in my body than silicone. But at the end of the day, the when it leaches any of this chemicals, what's the word I'm looking for, Robin?
The gel bleed.
The gel bleed. Does that make a difference? Like I show everyone information on breast implants because we all know someone, whether it's a mom, a sister, a friend who has them. They're so popular, right? I remember a car mechanic that I was talking to. I don't even know when I was fixing my car. He said, let me see some of those chemicals on there. And he's honed right in on methyl ethyl ketone. And he's like, oh, this couldn't be in a breast implant. And I said, oh, yeah, I don't know what that is. He said, well, I do. He said, if any of my guys even so much as inhaled a little bit of this, they would be in the ER. And that's when it started becoming really disturbing to me with the arsenic too, like both of you mentioned. Why would you have any of it in there? How would that need to be in there in order to have a breast implant? And when you talk about too, doctors and what they know, I don't even know that the ones who are putting them in are really aware of what these chemicals are or the heavy metals, right? They kind of are just, oh, well, everybody puts breast implants in. So I don't think they even are really aware. But yes, they were banned from the market. It was all about the rupture rate, though. They were blaming it on the rupture rate. I would venture to guess a lot of these women probably had symptoms correlating to BII as well. But that is the excuse that the surgeon who put them into me said. He said, these are made so durably. That's why you see all of these videos of the surgeons running over the implants and using a high heel to step on them. My implants were never ruptured. There was no sign of rupture when they came out. But that didn't mean that I couldn't get so chronically ill for 7.5 years. And so when he said to me, you'd have to have a spear go through these in order to puncture it. No, that had no correlation with the symptoms that I had and how sick I got.
So what were the years again that the moratorium, when were the implants taken off of the market?
I believe it was 1992, and then they were put back on the market in 2005, I believe was the FDA vote to return them to market, and they came back on the market in 2006. Yeah.
Okay. So it was really over a decade that
Yeah.
they were off of the market. Was there anything done in the time that that they were taken off the market and then they came back on? Was there anything done to improve the safety on them? Was that just a time period where they were, doing some kind of further testing? What was going on during that moratorium?
We are told that they were making safer breast implants. What they were doing was making pretty much the same exact implants. The only difference was they were making them more cohesive. So all those chemicals that we talk about and people ask, why are these chemicals in there? It takes a very specific mix of chemicals to make things hard or soft or a certain pliability, right? Like if you think about it, it's just plastic and rubber compounds that these chemicals are. And so I, I believe they think they were doing the right thing by saying, if these implants were rupturing and making women sick, it's because the silicone was like liquid and it was migrating through their body. Let's make a gel, a thicker substance that it won't leak into the body and just spill everywhere. So I think the thought process was the more cohesive you make these, the more they'll stick together and the less migration you'll have if you do have a rupture. Unfortunately, it's not about the consistency, whether it's liquid or gel or cohesive, extremely cohesive gel. All of these implants are made with those chemicals. The shells are made with those chemicals. And it's those chemicals that are making women sick and giving them cancer. And even the saline implants, we're seeing, there's actually been studies. There was one released last year. We're seeing studies on women with saline implants, and they're still getting silicone granulomas in their breast tissue. And that silicone's coming from the shell. So far to date, there has not been a breast implant made that is safe. There's not a single study out there that proves that breast implants are safe. So it's truly unfortunate, but it's also a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's a lot of money to be lost if they can't figure it out. So they just keep trying, and we keep talking about the next generation of implants, but every generation of implants has continued to make women sick. In fact, I almost have to say these newer generation cohesive silicone implants have seemed to make women sicker faster. The chemicals are just so extreme and harsh, on the body. And like I said, I looked up the safety data sheets of these chemicals, and if they're causing tissue damage, like Amanda said, that one, if you inhale it, it can cause lung damage, organ toxicity. What are we doing? Why are we putting this in women's bodies? So hopefully science will catch up. But, in my opinion, you have to be responsible with this product. And the unfortunate reality is that since breast implants have come on the market 60 years ago, nobody's properly followed patients. Nobody has properly tracked and monitored women's health that have breast implants in their bodies. Even the manufacturers, they were supposed to follow 42,000 women for a period of over 10 years. None of them did it. None of them fulfilled that obligation. And that's tragic, especially for a product that was already pulled from the market once. You would think the FDA would highly scrutinize these devices. On the contrary, the FDA was actually hiding over 446,000 reports of women who were harmed by these devices. And we didn't find that out until 2019 when we had our public hearing at the FDA in March of 2019. So it was a lot of information came out right around that meeting that the FDA was hiding these reports, that the cancers were being downplayed and lied about. When they started talking about breast implant cancers in 2011, the two national plastic surgeon societies in the United States, they held a joint webinar. And in that webinar, they told doctors to tell patients, this is not cancer. Tell the patients they have a condition. We don't want to scare them. We don't want to alarm them. Don't call it cancer. Don't mention the word tumor or malignancy. And, there was a whistleblower that was at that webinar and reported them to the FDA. And it's not the FDA's job to regulate physicians. The FDA regulates manufacturers and devices. But the FDA stepped in to those surgeon societies and told them to take that webinar down. So that was a really pivotal moment. And they continue to downplay and dismiss these cancers. They continue to say, it's rare. Hardly anyone gets those cancers. But as soon as they started talking more about the cancers, cases have skyrocketed. And I think it's only the tip of the iceberg. Just last weekend, we had the annual conference for the breast implant associated lymphoma. That was the first cancer they started talking about. And the doctors that were giving presentations on this cancer are saying, we're not even going to begin to see the start of this until about 2026. Because all these women, the average onset of these cancers is about 20 years. So all these women that rushed out and got implants when they came back to market 20 years ago, it's going to explode. The cases are going to explode. It's uncontrollable. And at this point, the societies are trying to do damage control. They're trying to think of any way they can to keep this under wraps. They're encouraging doctors not to remove the capsules that surround breast implants. So when you have breast implants put in your body forms a protective layer of tissue called a capsule around it. And, they're trying to tell doctors not to remove that capsule. Well, that capsule is where the cancers develop. And if we're not removing and testing those capsules, we're going to be missing many cancer cases. And that's just doing a disservice to the patients that, we've put our trust in the FDA, we've put our trust in the physicians. And, I'm willing to give grace when they didn't know all of this at the time. But they know better now. And when we know better, we have to do better. And they're not. I've literally been on meetings and committees and safety, committees with these people. In fact, I just resigned from one because it's a very highly incentivized committee. The doctors that are on it are paid very nicely from the industry and the manufacturers. They're not allowing any other doctors on these calls. It should be a multidisciplinary discussion. They're not allowing oncologists or explant surgeons. These are plastic surgeons, but they do mostly breast implants. So I suggested, let's have the explant surgeons come on these calls and be part of the conversation. Because that's where you're really going to get the information, not only from the patient community, but from the explant surgeon community. I asked to have oncologists on the call to talk about pathology, have pathologists come, and let's have this well-rounded discussion with a multidisciplinary team. And they don't want it that way. They have industry on the call. They have these industry paid surgeons on the call, and they want to control the narrative. And so, I had to tap out at some point. The work I do, I don't get paid for. And so I have to focus my efforts where I think it's going to make the most difference and be the most beneficial for patients. And that wasn't it. So I had to leave.
Wow. You just mentioned different types of cancers that are associated with breast implants, and that's probably a whole different podcast. I need to have you guys come back for that, because I'm sure we could talk forever about that topic. But can you just quickly tell us what are the current cancers that have been associated with breast implants?
So the one they started talking about first is a lymphoma. It's called BIALCL. It's kind of a mouthful. Breast implant associated anaplastic large cell lymphoma. We've also found B cell lymphomas, T cell lymphomas, and the latest, most recent one, the FDA has alerted the plastic surgery community to is called breast implant associated squamous cell carcinoma. Most people know squamous cell as a skin cancer. It's a very common skin cancer. It's very treatable when you have a squamous cell on your skin. And it's a similar type of cancer where it's based in the epithelial cells. But when it's found in the breast tissue and the breast implant capsule, it becomes highly aggressive. It metastasizes quickly. 50% of patients that are diagnosed with this cancer are dead within 6 months. It doesn't respond to chemotherapy or radiation treatment. So ALCL, on the other hand, has like a 2% mortality rate, and it's very highly treatable. You get the breast implants removed, maybe do a little chemo, radiation. The only way to stop this cancer is to aggressively remove the breasts, the sternum, the ribs. One patient had part of her heart, invaded her heart. She had to have her heart repaired. And then a titanium rib cage built and put back in her chest to protect her heart. And then the defect that they had to remove so much skin and tissue was so large. One patient had to have part of her thigh removed to have the tissue brought up to her chest to close the defect and the hole in her chest. This is serious. And the average onset of this cancer is about 20 years. So we are just starting to see the results of this. And it's frightening. And also, unlike ALCL, which a lot of the plastic surgeons poo-pooed the cancers when we were talking about ALCL because they were saying it's mostly textured implants. But this new SCC that they're talking about, by the way, it's not new. I have found case studies that go back to the 1990s. They've just been keeping it secret. But these cancers are caused by silicone implants, saline implants, textured implants, and smooth. So we have a big problem on our hands, and we really need to get behind it and just save lives by raising awareness about this and letting the medical community know.
Wow. Okay. Well, I definitely want to have you guys back to talk about the cancers, because I think I have so many more questions about that. But I want to stick with the breast implant illness right now. Because I imagine that someone listening to this might be going, okay, I have breast implants. How do I know if I have breast implant illness? What are, kind of the typical symptoms that are seen in someone who has developed BII? Amanda, can you give us a little more information about that?
Yes, and there is a laundry list of symptoms that you can Google now. I have it on my Instagram account too. And I always say this to women. If you have had a number of symptoms that you've been trying to, go to practitioner to figure out, and you're not getting any relief or things are not healing, and you happen to have breast implants, you might want to consider it. There is no hard test to take, unfortunately. But the women that I was seeing in the last 4 years come into the office typically were quite sick, had been sick for quite a long time, had worked with functional medicine docs, had gone to every rheumatologist, etc., and it just weren't getting, any relief from their symptoms. So at that point, you have to make that choice. I don't think anyone should rush to make that choice. It's a huge one. For me, it just resonated, and I had been sick for so long that I just didn't want to waste any time. I was happy to get rid of them. I never liked them anyway. But for these women, it's a process. I've had some women who have been talking to me for the last 4 years since I started my account, and just now are getting to the point where they said, you know what? I've given it some time. Things are continuing to get worse, not better. That's what happened in my case. I continued to go downhill. Nothing was really getting better. If I was doing everything right, drinking my green juice, doing yoga every day, walking, I would have a little bit of improvement in the inflammation. But a lot of women will say that one day can be really horrible. You can't even get out of bed. And then the next day you're like, okay, I'm doing fine. But for these women, raising children and working and being the best moms and wives they can be, I don't even think I could have raised children having that many things wrong. I was so sick. And so I just always want to say that the women who have gone through this, some of them for 20 to 30 years, not knowing, these are the true heroes in all of this. I just can't. I mean, the stories you hear, you'll never be the same once you start hearing them. And once you start seeing these women come into the office, remove their implants, and some of their symptoms reversing within a month or two. I had a woman get off chemo within a month. She was a nurse, of getting her implants out.
Wow. And just to kind of reiterate the point, I know, Robin, you said your symptoms appeared right away. And yours, Amanda, kind of took a little bit longer to start to develop. So is there a timeline on what is typical with this, or does it just depend on the person? Some people it happens right away. Some people it might take, 5 years, 10 years. How does that work?
Yeah, I think it's our toxic bucket. I mean, it really depends on your lifestyle choices. For me, it took, a good 7 years or so. Some women I've seen get sick immediately, like Robin, and then they're able to take them out, which I kind of think oh, you're so lucky that your body gave you the heads up. But we all have different circumstances in our life. Like the breast implants were my kryptonite, but they're not for another woman. But yet Botox can be a woman's kryptonite, right? That can cause that immune response.
Yeah, I've seen the same. I think it's kind of all over the board. I got sick right away. I think a lot of women do get sick like in the first 3 to 6 months, and they just don't realize it's the implants. They just don't know why they're feeling bad until maybe years later. But I think the average is, just after several years, things just very slowly start creeping up. I think that's the most difficult part. And like Amanda said, I do consider myself lucky that I got so sick so fast. because it was like hitting me in the head with a hammer. I had to pay attention because it was just not normal. But when you just have one or two symptoms creep up every year, I think it's really harder to decipher what's going on because, people think, well, I'm just tired because I'm a busy mom, or I have a, stressful job, or I'm in a stressful marriage. And you just really don't know, or you just think I'm middle age and this is my new normal.
And I definitely fall in that category because I've been wanting my implants out for a while, especially just after having kids and breastfeeding. I'm like, I just don't want them. I just want to be small again. And so that's something that, and I had heard you, Amanda, talking about that on another podcast, how, you'll go through the list with women, and I went through the list, and there are definitely some things on the list that I'm like, well, I do have that. I do have that. I had, some blurred vision issues for years. And every time I go to the eye doctor, they're like, there's nothing wrong with your eyes. Everything, you have 20/20 vision, you're fine. Just, different little things that, I don't know. We'll see when I finally get them taken out. I'm really curious to see if some of those things clear up. But I think it's definitely interesting, and, to just see that list of how many different symptoms there are, and how this can, just manifest in different women. It's really, it's scary and, just crazy to think that, we're just not being warned about this. We're not being told about these possibilities when we are considering, getting implants. So, for women like myself, I'm asking for myself, for those of us that are looking to have implants explanted, what kind of advice do you guys have on finding a surgeon that can do that and is experienced with that? Because I think that this is something, I've seen the statistics. There are, masses of women now who are getting their implants taken out. I think whether it be for breast implant illness, or because now they're telling us that the trend for our bodies is to, make everything smaller versus bigger, which is what they told us, years ago that we needed to do. So, I've seen the statistics saying that there are all of these women that are having their breast implants removed, or even just taking them out and putting in smaller ones. There's a huge trend towards that. So I imagine that there are more and more doctors who are, getting more experience with the explant surgeries. But I still think, you want to find someone who's probably doing these on a more consistent basis, that has, done quite a number of these. You don't want to go to the guy that only puts breast implants in, and you're just the one patient that pops in his office and says, hey, can you take mine out? So what kind of advice do you guys have on how we can find someone to explant breast implants for us?
Yeah, I think besides making the decision to explant, choosing your surgeon is the most important decision, because there is a group of surgeons out there who, like I said earlier, they're not serious about capsule removal. They don't understand the importance of it, or they're not taking it seriously. My best advice is, there are so many Facebook groups that are support groups, and there's some that have hundreds of thousands of women in them. There's some that are very small and they're localized. I recommend joining a local group, finding women who live near where you live, who have had explant surgery, talking to those women. Our community is amazing. Like, they will share pictures with you, and not just about the capsules, but that's the most important part to me, because that's what causes the disease, but also aesthetic results. Like, well, I had mine removed and got a lift, or I didn't need a lift, or this surgeon doesn't like to do lifts at the same time. So there's so many different surgeons out there, and just what they prefer to do. So really networking with the patient community, because you will start to see surgeons that will put it on their websites, advertising, oh yeah, I do implant removal. Well, they do it in the office. It takes 20 minutes under twilight, and they don't remove the capsules. And these women are staying sick, or they're developing cancer a year later because the capsule out. So, we just really recommend finding a network of people in your area, or contact Amanda or I. We have connections all over the globe. We can connect you with people in your area and help you find a surgeon. But it's super important to get those capsules removed. Because, they're even publishing studies that are funded by industry that are saying, oh, it's not important to remove the capsules. But we just know better from real world experience and seeing hundreds of thousands of women explant. I think at this point, I've been doing this for 7 years. Amanda's been doing it for 6. Between the two of us, we've literally looked at probably tens of thousands of sets of breasts and capsules and implants. So I think it's really important to go to a doctor who understands and is willing to listen to you and what you want.
Yeah. My best advice, just having worked in the industry as long as I have, and for my own experience, if you can go to at least 3 consults, that always has been the rule of thumb for me, that I always advise, no matter what the surgery is, because just because I resonated with a surgeon doesn't mean that somebody else is going to. And we see that all the time and hear about it. I can't tell you how many women DM me. They're like, oh, I went to so and so, but just didn't jive with me for whatever reason, although I know that they're probably a great surgeon. I would want to go to a surgeon who's doing this on a routine basis, because just because they're taught how to do an explant, they can be the most fabulous surgeon when it comes to implanting, but that doesn't mean that they've done more than a few explants. So I want, for my safety, somebody who's doing this on a regular basis and somebody who listened. I went to 3 before I found my surgeon, and they weren't listening to me. They were refusing to even remove them, which was really the creepiest part, I thought, of my whole 6.5-year story. When I finally figured out and wanted them out, I came against such resistance. Like, these surgeons did not want to remove them. They said I would not be happy. I would be left deformed. I would not get better because these were not what was causing my illness. So I was having to then, with the little energy I had, argue with these surgeons. And I walked out of those offices just thinking to myself, there's just no way that I would even let them touch my body. And I will keep looking until I find the right surgeon. And one who listened to my whole story and said, let's take these out and leave them out. And it's just, there's a lot more, I think, that's going to come out, like there is coming out in so many of these industries. This is a very dark industry, and I'm very happy to not be working in it anymore. I did for many years. I loved helping patients and will still continue to do that. But yeah, there's a lot of stories. I think I have a lot of stories, and I'm sure they'll all.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have you come back another day and we'll talk about some of those stories. Cause I can only imagine. And, just in the time that I have been really, researching more and looking into just different things across the entire beauty industry, including, our products, the actual procedures, everything. It's definitely really scary. A lot of the things that are going on, and a lot of the women that I've talked to have just told me just crazy things that are really hard to believe. So I'm sure that you're happy to be, a little bit distanced from the industry. Something that I wanted to ask about quickly, and I think you just kind of touched on it, Robin, is removing the capsule. Because I actually went to a consult with a plastic surgeon not long after my son was born, about getting my implants removed. And first of all, he told me this whole idea that they can basically rupture the implant in the office to like drain the saline, so that I would be able to see what I would look like, before the surgery. And I could make the decision if I wanted to have a lift or not have a lift. So I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you could even do that. I didn't know that that was a possibility, but he said, since they're saline, we can do that. Since digging in more, so then after that, I find out kind of what you were saying about the twilight, anesthesia, and that you can basically go into an office, they can pop the implant and they just, do a little cut and pull it right out, and that's it. And so at first I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That would be such an, easy, quick thing. I could go have that done. I'm sure the cost is probably a lot cheaper for that too. But then I started to dig a little bit more, and I've seen some different things. One of the things that I have seen, are these pictures of moldy saline implants. I've seen kind of floating around the internet and different people talking about that. my understanding is that this is kind of a rare thing to happen, but something that was a little bit scary to me is, okay, well, if I go in and you pop this implant and the saline is just going to like drain all into my body with whatever else is inside of that implant. And if it happens to be full of mold or, something else, that is a little bit scary to me. So I'm curious of what your all's opinions are on that process. Is that something that I don't know. Do you think we should be avoiding that? Have you seen a lot of these situations with these moldy saline implants? I don't really know what
I have a set of moldy saline implants that came out of a patient. So if it's so rare, how do I have a set and so many other people? But the answer for me is an absolute no. That is terrifying for me that a surgeon would be so reckless and irresponsible, knowing what could be in there, not just mold. It could be mold. But it could be there's bacteria and pathogens. Saline implants have a valve, right, that they can use to fill or take liquid out of the implant. And that valve is not sealed shut. And so you have this exchange of fluids. So you have bodily fluids from your breast tissue or from, fluid that's in your capsule that can get into the implant, and the saline can get out of the implant. Thank goodness for our capsule, because our body builds that to protect us. But if you break open that capsule and then break open that implant to pull the implant out, and you're draining the saline, you cannot prevent spillage. And everything that could possibly be in that saline, saline has a shelf life. If you go to any hospital or surgical center, the typical bag of IV saline is good for about 1.5 years on the shelf, and there's an expiration date. These women have had.
And I've had mine in for like 12 years now.
Exactly.
So I don't know if that should just
in your body,
let loose in my body.
98.6 degrees. That's a perfect breeding ground for bacteria, mold, fungus. I mean, you name it, all sorts of pathogens that could be in there. So it's very irresponsible for me that doctors would do that. And again, I feel like they're just thinking of aesthetics. Like, oh, Whitney, we could do this for you so you could see what you'll look like without your implants. But is that the safest option for the patient? No, it's not, especially if these patients are sick, so the answer for me is an absolute no. That is a no. And if a surgeon even suggests it, I say go find someone else, because we have a really good surgeon here in Arizona, and I had a patient who, and he does great explants and block. I mean, I've seen him do a stellar, perfect job. But then I had a patient call me, and she's like, he told me to drain my saline implants. I'm like, well, do what you want with it. I never tell somebody, don't go to him. But, I explained to her the process of what that can do, and she opted not to go with him. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully they'll learn from the education.
Somebody once said that. They said, plastic surgeons are artists. They're not doctors who are thinking or even understanding true wellness. And if I really think back on all the surgeons that I've worked for over the years, while they were very talented at what they did, I would look at things like what they ate during the day, and they would be drinking Red Bull all day. And I know that they don't believe in adrenal fatigue probably, but I'm quite certain that they probably developed those habits in college, cramming for tests and so forth. And just from a spiritual, physical, they just weren't very healthy, in my opinion. So I wouldn't want to take health advice from any of them. But that's all we're concerned about with mine. Oh, you're going to be deformed. And they're saying this to someone who did have a deformity. And at that point, I was like, no, you know what? If I find the right surgeon, I said, God, I even bet they'll look great. And there is no evidence of nothing looks like a deformity. They look great. You can't even really see my scars. But if I had listened to that and they had scared me or another woman into not doing it, I can't even imagine what my quality of life would be like now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even, it was not, those aren't true stories.
Yeah. There's a lot of fear mongering, especially in the breast cancer community, because, I had my breasts removed. So I have nothing left after explant. And, when surgeons are talking to patients about reconstruction, it's like, you have to do this or you won't feel like a woman. You won't feel whole again. You won't be happy with your body. And I'm sitting here thinking, At 44 years old, I'd never felt more broken in my entire life. And I've had cancer 3 times, 3 different cancers, but those breast implants took me down way worse than any cancer did. So, to prey on a breast cancer patient at their most vulnerable moment, or a woman who, is going through the middle of her life. And obviously we're all worried about what we look like. We care, but to gaslight them and fearmonger them into saying you won't be happy unless you have your implants. Mm-hmm. That's just criminal, honestly. It's really unfortunate.
And I think it's crazy. It's crazy that, this is a woman who just went through cancer, and now you're telling her that she needs to put a device back into her body that we now know causes several different types of cancer. So again, I think all of this just really comes back to informed consent and knowing the dangers of what we are putting in and on our bodies. And again, this is not, I'm not saying nobody ever go get breast implants. Obviously, people have different reasons for doing the different things that they do. And if you think it's going to make you feel better about yourself, everybody has a different decision to make for their own bodies and for their own health. But I really think what you guys are doing is so amazing. And the fact that you are just spreading this information, because like I said earlier, I just think so many people have never heard any of this stuff. They have absolutely no idea. And so even the people who say, you know what, okay, I understand that all of this is a risk and this could potentially happen, but I still really want them and I'm going to do it anyway. I think just knowing this information then, well, once you get the implants, if you start getting sick, if you start to develop these symptoms, you can very quickly put the pieces together and go, oh, maybe it's the implants that I just put in, versus spending 7.5 years like you, Amanda, just being chronically ill and not knowing what's going on. So
that's all.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, that's all I want.
Yeah.
It's just to figure it out earlier. Don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, working in the industry, you would think like, oh, she should have figured it out immediately. No, it's the opposite. They kept me even more in the dark. And quite frankly, I say this, I'm not happy that I didn't know more when I'm selling a product. I will take responsibility for the fact that I did not sit and do extra research, but these reps come into your offices over the years. They're beautiful. Everything's shiny and bright. They used to bring us lunch. I don't think they can do that anymore.
Yeah, they can. They just have to report it.
They're only telling you the bright side thing. Yeah. And when people are busy, and you are busy, I would be exhausted working as much as I did. I would sometimes do like 20 consults a day over the years. And I just remember home on a Friday, I couldn't even talk the rest of the weekend just from meeting with so many people. And so we don't have the time to sit and do the research, but it bothers me. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I feel so badly that I didn't know more. And, Whitney, we laughed about this one day, right? Whenever they use the word rare, I'm like, well, it sure wasn't rare when I was helping 3 to 4 women get their implants out. And I know you get so many. How could it be rare?
Yeah. I'll tell you what is rare is for surgeons to actually give proper informed consent. That is rare because, this is a money-making device for them. They will only tell you the good things and how great you're going to look and love your new breasts. But, at the end of the day, informed consent isn't just a sheet of paper. It's a conversation. And I have just been told over and over and over. We actually did a survey in 2020. Over 5,000 women responded, and 86% of them said they'd never got proper informed consent. They didn't know the risk. They didn't understand the risk, the maintenance, and the complications with breast implants. They don't understand that choosing breast implants isn't one surgery. You are signing up for a lifetime of surgeries, possible complications, possible health problems, possible cancers. Going back to the cancers really quick, breast cancer patients and patients that have the BRCA gene are at a higher risk of getting all of the cancers associated with breast implants. How many women have gotten a preventative mastectomy because their mother, their grandmother, had the BRCA gene, they have the BRCA gene, and they remove their breasts to prevent getting cancer because they were scared of getting cancer. And now they're at a higher risk of getting cancer from their breast implants. I mean, that's a candle. I just learned that last weekend at the ALCL conference, and it really, really hit my heart hard because that's a population that's already vulnerable, already immune compromised. And now they're getting these toxic bags of chemicals in their chest that they have a higher risk of getting cancer than just an augmentation patient. It's tragic.
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely something, like I said earlier, my brain is spinning and I have all these questions about the cancers, but maybe I'll have you guys back another day because I know we've been going about an hour. So I'm going to wrap things up here. Robin, where can people find out more information about you and your organization, and learn more about breast implant illness?
So I am just Robin Tout on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And then also our website is gpacunited.org. And we have great resources on there. Everything from, scientific studies about the cancers. We also work with patients with other medical devices. Checklists, patient checklists, things you should know if you're considering getting breast implants or, explants, what kind of symptoms to look for if you're thinking of explanting. So lots of information on our website. Check it out.
Thank you. And Amanda, where can we learn more about you?
On Instagram, The Holistic Beauty Coach.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing all of this information. Definitely need to have you back so we can talk about some other things. I have like 8,000 questions. I could probably keep you on here for 3 hours, but I won't do that. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you want more content like this, please follow me on Instagram @BeautyJusticeWit. And if you've been injured by a cosmetic product or procedure and you want to learn about your legal rights, please visit my website, beautyjustice.com, and sign up for a free case evaluation.